And so there is quite simply no separation. There is no separation. There is one undivided whole. The world, the play of the world on the surface, is in a constant attempt to sell us separation, something that is not real. In the simplicity of existence, simply being, we find our own wholeness. We find the part of us, let's say, that knows there is no separation. We cannot, by digging around in things of the world, try to find out and discover this simple truth. We can only come to know this truth in the heart as what we are, to come to know the undivided being that we are. And the knowing is a simple and pure knowledge of the self, knowing the part of you that is so constantly overlooked. It is about bringing into the foreground that which is seemingly in the background, bringing forward the part of you that knows wholeness, part of you that knows itself, part of you that is love and beauty, the part of you that knows the immaculate, pure and simple nature, part of you that is freedom itself, seemingly in the background, but never ever diminished in any way. So if there were a quest of this human life, it is quite simply to bring forward what is constantly overlooked. We are not looking for something that we are not already. We are already whole, undivided, pure and simple, innocent being. We are not on a quest to discover something new. We are bringing forward what is constantly overlooked and that which already knows. It knows itself, and the self knowing itself, it's enough. It's more than enough. It's a wellspring. It's spilling over with its own glory. It's not the kind of enough that the me is constantly trying to tell itself as a way of trying to prove its wholeness when it feels divided and as if something is missing. The only way we come to know this wholeness is to know the fullness of what we already are. Curiously, in order to know the fullness of what we already are, we have to empty. We have to empty of all of the content. We have to empty of everything that we have held important, everything that the mind thinks that it knows, everything the mind values. We have to empty out the archives of false knowledge, empty it all out in order to reveal the great glory and fullness of true nature. But to empty is not a doing. To empty is to discover the emptiness of this moment when the attention is simply resting in its own nature. When attention is simply resting, there is the simple knowing of what is true, because you are what is true. Truth is not something that the mind can know or understand. And being the being is not something that the mind can come to. It's not something that the mind or the me can explore. When mind is dominant, there's just mind thinking. It's happening in the spaciousness of being, but the me doesn't explore the being. The being comes forward out of the seeming background in the absence of mind and is discovered to always be here. The being has been your constant companion, your own beingness, your own self, your own silent gorgeousness has been your constant companion through the whole life. You have never been divided from the wholeness. You have never been divided away from truth, away from God, away from the glory of the divine. Have never ever been divided. Have only ever been one with all that is. This is the truth that the heart already knows. So as these words come, it is to feel the resonance of truth, because you are that truth. And as these words come and the truth is enlivened and resonating, the field is enlivened and resonating, full of remembering. So you feel that inside, you feel that in the truth of what you already are, of what is already known. We are not looking for things. We are falling back into the no-thingness, into this simple emptiness of being. Cannot find this truth in things, cannot find it in the world, cannot find it with the mind. The world has nothing for you, nothing for you. That is the great delusion. To be distracted in wanting, desiring things of the world. So many moments, days, weeks, months, years wasted. Desiring things of the world. We have this precious life to discover this truth. We have this precious life, this human embodiment to discover this truth and to complete our earthly mission. To bring forward the remembering, to fall simply into the silence of eternity, the timeless now, the simplicity of being here quite simply as yourself, to feel the felt sense of existence and fall into this moment, pulling in all of the tendrils of seeking and searching in the worldly, pulling in the tendrils of wants and desires and needs, and discover the truth of who you are. And then life truly begins, living truly begins. When we have conquered death, when we have conquered the mind's greatest fear, living truly starts. And living is joy, and living is happiness, and living is love. Living is life living itself. Yes, there is a flow of grace unfolding where life, the play of life, it acts as a polisher, a burnisher, sweeping, clearing, polishing, not leaving anything unturned, so that we can be so utterly free in the true nature and not burdened and weighed down by stories and conditioning. So we come to this truth, this discovery that there is no separation. And in the knowing that there is no separation, we can live this wholeness. What separates is thought. Believing thoughts. But in the silence of now, in the simplicity of being, there is the whole truth of what you are and what this is. The discovery is the recognition, the deepest remembering of what you have always been. It is an invitation, a constant invitation to avert the gaze from the worldly play of things and to gaze into your own self, gaze into your own true nature, to come to the being and discover the preciousness of what is right here, your own wholeness, your own knowing, your own clear knowing that what you are in truth is not the person divided from the whole, but wholeness itself, dancing as the appearance, dancing as the play of life, life living itself, gloriously enjoying itself. So it is to make the allegiance to being, solidarity with self, right? Do not be fooled by stories. Do not let the world sell you separation and fool you into dividing, into mind of opinions, into fear and stress and stories. Let the stories of the world that come into your view crack your heart open. Feel where they touch you, but do not leave yourself in order to play out what that worldly story wants you to play into. Do not be fooled. Be the peace, be the wholeness, be the love, be the change, right? What is the change? The change is the shift out of the illusion and delusion that there is any separation. Can see a world that operates out of that delusion, right? Most beings are seeing a world that is operating based out of the belief in separation. Essentially, it is a deep imbalance. It is an imbalance which brings forward a power over. It is missing the essential balance and harmony of true nature, which is about interconnectedness, the knowing of the oneness. It is about love. It is about the all-inclusive wholeness of being. It is one with no other. And to the depth of your knowing, it is to make an allegiance with yourself, with this knowing. Bring all of your life into balance. Find all of the places that are in denial. Find all of the places where power is being given to the external, and pull in the tendrils out of the drama, out of the story, and into the truth. Pull in all of the tendrils that are searching in the external to be seen, to be validated, to be approved of, to get love. See all of the ways that our human conditioning perpetuates this great imbalance that is the story of separation. See through it. See all the way through it. It is the only way that change on the surface will come about. And at the moment, even so many beings that are speaking about the nature of reality are still in the delusion of imbalance, because it is a collective story that has its own delusional power play. Our divine responsibility is to know the self, know the true being, and to live it so deeply that we see through all of the patterns, all of the ways that this subtle imbalance continues to play out, all of the ways that we would rather stay comfortable than to actually fall into the great glory of our own true nature. As these words come, it is to feel the resonance. Feel the resonance. If you feel the heart alive with the power and light of truth, and feel if your me is quaking in the recognition of what is being denied in the name of comfort and in the name of wanting to just have an easy life, right? Just notice. There is no one judging, there are no opinions, but there is a constant invitation to face yourself so fully. Face yourself so fully, in order to illuminate all the ways that this great imbalance continues to play out. Do not be distracted by stories of the worldly without looking at your own life first. Because our lives are a micro of the macro, let's say. It's all one, it's all included. But we have this power to shift the collective, to uplift humanity by living in the truth of being, not by playing out the small dance on the surface of life, not by getting concerned with stories and giving power to those stories of division. Our true power lies in knowing our true nature. The true power is a self-sustaining wholeness. It is the glory of the divine that lives inside us, and it is whole and pure and true. And out of this is born the appearance of the world. It is here to shake us, leave us quaking, but not to leave us fearful. It is to discover that which is fearless, that which is not touched by anything that is happening on the surface of life, to know the depth of our eternal wholeness fearlessly, to live as life itself. Be the pioneers in this time on the surface of life. Be the pioneers, the carriers of light, right? Shining. Do not let anything dim your light. So easy to buy the story of separation, so easy to be deluded, so easy to be pulled in and be dimmed. Let the light of your own innocent, immaculate nature be dimmed. It is to see, what are you in collaboration with? What are you living in allegiance with? The constant invitation of the glory is to know yourself. Be here now. Watch the play as conditioning will try to move into distraction. It will try to play out what is familiar and feels safe. But that kind of false safety is not true safety. True safety only comes in the knowledge, the pure knowledge of the self. Anything that divides, anything that separates, anything that holds a position is part of the delusion, part of the story. So watch the mind, see through the mind. Know that the being that you are, the eternal oneness that you are, is never touched. It is not a process of working through the mind in order to know the being. The mind never knows the being. You see through the mind. You see through the mind in a moment, bang, pop. You see through the mind and its constant storytelling to itself. You see through it and you see the glory, the light, and that the light has always been here. It is not at the end of the tunnel. There is no tunnel, right? Let the stories be done with. Let the mind talking to the mind be illuminated by the true light of your own divine nature right now in this moment, right? The constant invitation is to bring into the foreground that which is constantly here, seemingly in the background. It is constantly overlooked, even though it has been the constant companion in this lifetime. There is a part of you that has never changed. There is a part of you that has always been awake to its own nature. There is part of you that knows the interconnectedness, the oneness with all. And most importantly, the oneness with God, with Divine Mother, with Ma. There is a part of you, and it is your heart, your true, precious heart. We have learned to move from the mind and not from the heart. The movement from the mind is part of the great imbalance that plays as the story of separation. It matters not whether we have a male or a female form. We have unfortunately all been sold a great big non-truth that we have to operate from the mind, and we have to empower and be strong and not feel, right? So we are learning to feel again. We are learning to live from the heart, to discover the love that is without condition, that is the true nature, to discover our softness, our tenderness, the preciousness of being a wide open heart, and how being a wide open heart that is joyful and happy in the face of adversity is the greatest support to all of humanity, right? It is your wide open heart, your joyful happiness in the face of adversity, the peace that is undisturbable in the face of any story that comes in front of your view. This is what uplifts humanity. This is being the change, living the change, by living so deeply in your eternal nature that you are fearless in the face of any story of the world, and you are making your collaboration fearlessly with yourself, and you are not buying all of the possibilities to move into imbalance, strategy, containment, moving from the mind, moving from fear, that you are the wide open heart of love. And as the wide open heart of love, there is a willingness to face it all. Face it all. Surrender deeper and deeper. Be cracked open. Be brought to your knees again and again. We're not talking about ignoring or bypassing. We're talking about being opened even more, even more, even more. Being in a perpetual surrender as life itself, living itself. We could say that life is constantly on its knees in surrender to itself, right? This is the flow of surrender. It is life living itself. Life in devotion to itself is ever on its knees in utter devotion to itself. The glory is ever in devotion to its own glory. That's how it generates its own sustaining whole nature, through falling into itself in utter devotion again and again. Love, we could say, loving itself, right? We're never stagnant. We never stop. We never arrive. We never hold a position. We never are in a position of authority. We're in constant humbling, ever falling into a deeper value. This truth is a pure truth that is always here and always stable. And yet there is a way that it is in a perpetual surrender to itself. It is in constant devotion to itself. And in that, there is a quality of an evolution, right? We have to keep so clear, so ever present, so willing to keep falling in and in constant surrender, in order for consciousness to be uplifted, right? If we become stagnant and static and stuck in this imbalance of power in any way, the evolution of consciousness is being stagnated, right? So we have to be willing to never arrive, never achieve, never be celebrating and patting ourselves on the back, to be so busy falling in and in, so busy transmuting every subtle discordant movement in the field, ever falling in, ever falling in, ever falling into the glory, in purer and purer devotion, in purer and purer surrender. So as these words come to feel the resonance of what is being spoken, and feel where it brings you alive. Fall into the aliveness. Drink the nectar. Do not be afraid to drink the nectar of the resonance of your own knowing. And feel too where you are stirred and there is a quaking of the ego sense. Do not be distracted into stories of guilt or shame. Do not be distracted by defense and protection, anything that wants to hold opinion or judgment. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Let this moment be the only moment. These words that are coming are not to be held on to. They're not a teaching that you hold on to. They're not instructions to follow. This is life living itself. This is not past or future. This is this life living itself. This is life in surrender to itself. This is life in devotion to itself. So feel the flow of life living itself through your body-mind in constant and perpetual surrender to itself. Feel what comes alive, feel where you are touched, feel where you are humbled, feel the energies of protection and let them be crumbled into the being. We are only here for this perpetual invitation that is satsang. The perpetual invitation is to meet in truth, meet in truth, meet in a truth that is pure. Have such an eye of discrimination to be able to discern what is real and unreal, to feel where there are imbalances of power trying to delude us everywhere. Have the ability to trust your own heart all the way through. The heart that can be trusted all the way through is the pure heart of being, and it is only ever present here now. It is simple and pure and alive and open. It is humble in its nature. There is a way that the self knows itself. But as the self knows itself, it is so stripped that it is not referring to itself. It is not glorifying itself. It is so stripped, so transparent, so honest, so free, so clear that it's unquestionable, right? This is who you are in truth. This is the wholeness that you are in truth, that is ever falling deeper into itself. So be carried by the flow of your own life living itself. Be carried by your own surrender. Be carried by your own purity. Life truly lived is freedom itself, living itself. You are that freedom. You are not dependent upon anything. You do not need validation, affirmation. You do not need worldly belonging. Belong only to yourself. And then the belonging is so true. The meeting in the oneness of the heart. It is so all-encompassing. It leaves you as the light. In this moment, you are the light, the love. And there is a moving as the embodiment of this light, of this love on the surface of life. You are a secret agent, a true missionary, living in collaboration, in harmony with life itself, not resisting anything. You are the wide open heart that is pure and true and real and knowing itself. You are the being, simply being, here now, in this timeless moment, this timeless now. There is no mind. Mind is not thinking about whether it recognizes this, whether it gets it, All of that is part of the delusion. The idea that there is something that can be done, that you can try harder, you can do this or that. Let it all go. It's all part of the delusion that distracts you into the idea of a future where maybe in the future you will get it. But here now, you are the glory, the grace, the wholeness. You are the silent heart of being. We are just bringing forward what has been here all along so we can remember self, your true nature, remember who you are, remember there is no separation, remember the wholeness, remember the peace that cannot be disturbed, remember that true peace is the peace of the heart and that world is always moving and changing, right? Remember that peace is the nature of the self abiding in its own simple wisdom of itself. And hear the fullness, hear the simplicity, hear the wide open heart that is empty of content and yet brimming full of wholeness of the self. Remember the awe and the wonder of discovering yourself in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, fresh, fresh, fresh. Remember the freshness of your innocent, pure, open heart, ever present, ever fresh. Remember the gorgeousness, the beauty of life lived in utter freedom. Remember that this is who you have always been and that you have never been divided from this whole, that you have never been divided from what we call God or Divine Mother or Ma or Divinity. Remember that you have never been divided and that in your own heart you find this truth. You find this truth, the divine nature, that to which all beings belong. That all the longing and of the life has only been to belong to yourself. All of the longing of the life for love, for the great love affair, for intimacy, has only ever been to discover the love that you are and fall all the way in love with yourself. The intimacy of this moment is so honest, so clear. It demands you to be here so fully with yourself, to see yourself so fully, to gaze right into your own heart, to meet yourself in such profound intimacy, such profound love that the me could never conjure, because the me is always in a story of something missing. It is a machine, a program that is in constant denial and is constantly feeling that something is missing. But here now, as you meet yourself in pure and simple intimacy, you discover that there has never been anything missing, that you are whole and true and pure, immaculate being, innocent glory right now. This discovery does not come in the way the mind has been expecting. It is the simple felt sense of being utterly stripped of all hope, all definition, all explanation, all want, all desire, all need, being stripped so fully of all the tendrils extending into worldly things, stripped, emptied, humbled, and yet hear the glory, hear the richness, hear the shining light, hear the simple truth, the stripped back, pared down reality of who you are. A peace so deep and all-encompassing, a silence that has no opposite in noise, a pull so compelling, magnetically drawing you into yourself. An aliveness of recognition, a presence so fully present, here, now, timeless, a familiarity that this has always been here. This is who you have always been. You have never been away, so this is not even a homecoming. It is a recognition where the remembering is sparked. It's sparked deep in the innermost being, deep, deep in the light of your own heart, sparking a remembering. You can feel the wholeness. It is not to be understood or held onto in any way with the mind. It is to see as the aware being how the mind might try to come in and understand, but just to see that mind and not go towards it with attention, to just fall deeper into collaboration, allegiance with the truth of who you are, the remembering of your undivided nature, the true self that can see it all and yet is untouched. Empty of content. Here, the wisdom is pure knowledge. Pure knowledge is the simple knowledge of only the self knowing itself and nothing more. This is the enoughness, the self-sustaining richness, the enoughness of utter wholeness. And nothing else is needed because everything is here. When everything is forgotten and nothing is behind you and nothing is in front of you, all the tendrils are pulled in and you are here now, in this moment, this moment, this moment, awake to itself, this moment, awake to itself, in divine remembering of this glory, this beauty, this simple, simple being that is silent and still and resting in the knowing of itself. Can you feel the resonance of truth? Come to where you feel the resonance of truth. Come to where you recognize this truth that is being spoken as the truth of who you are. There is no separation. These words are your words. They are the word. The being simply being. Here you are in the purity, the freedom, the simplicity. Here you are in the stillness. Feel the still, silent background as it comes forward into the foreground, and as it comes into the foreground, what was in the foreground disappears. We are not worried about where it has gone, because there is a fullness here. There is a richness here. Here now in the landscape of your own consciousness, deep, deep in your own consciousness, where you are consciously aware of yourself being here. The field is infinite and unbounded. The field has no edges, no boundaries. So as these words come, check in your direct experience that in the felt sense of being here, you feel yourself here. Do you find a beginning? Do you find an end to what you are? Can you recognize the infinite nature? That you are without boundaries, you are without limit or containment, that the felt sense of what you are is spacious, it could feel to be expanded, but in that feeling of expansion, take a look and see how far does the expanse go. Do you find an end? Can you feel whether you are big or small? Notice you have no size. You are immeasurable. The only knowing is that you are here. For some, the feeling of just being here, the expandedness, the stillness, the silence might feel very dominant. For some, the aliveness might feel very, very alive. For some, the swooning flow of devotion, the perpetual surrender of life surrendering into itself in devotion might feel very, very alive. It does not matter. It's not to be trying to find an experience that is the same as what is being spoken. It is to allow the words to carry you into your own direct experience and confirm in your own heart the truth of what is being spoken. It is not about believing. Let belief be blown away, right? This glory is the direct and true experience of yourself here now. So the invitation is to be so present with your own direct experience of simply being. And what that is, that in the felt sense of being, there is the knowing of yourself as being the unlimited, that you are not the person that you have imagined yourself to be, that here the knowing that there is no separation. Here the felt sense, it's not someone knowing, it's the self-knowing itself, that the knowing of no separation is the wholeness itself, just reveling in its own wholeness. The being knowing itself just through simply being is how the being falls deeper in, can fall deeper into the stillness, the silence. The field is enlivened. The presence that is silent. Notice it. Notice the unmoving, unchanging, silent field. That it is so still, so still. And yet the stillness, the silence, it is alive with its own presence. And in here is the innermost being's ability to know itself, see itself, recognize itself, and fall deeper in, fall deeper in. And for the ones where this wisdom is already enlivened and known, the knowing just deepens with the transmission. The knowing just deepens. And as the knowing deepens, there are these reverberations that are uplifting humanity in this moment, this glorious moment. The deeper that we are in, the more we are reverberating in the knowing, the more we are drinking the nectar of our blissful remembering as the wide open infinite ocean of being, the more the reverberations are shifting the collective consciousness, right? And we are transmuting the field as the ocean, right? The ocean, doesn't matter to the ocean how many times it takes the form of a wave. Doesn't matter when the winds blow and the waves come up. The ocean is always the ocean, deep and still and knowing its oceanic nature, right? Never disturbed, never upset. Does not matter if a storm comes in and there are swells and swirls. Does not matter if the surface is dancing. The ocean knows, and you are that ocean of consciousness that always knows the innate nature. It does not mean that the surface of life does not still present plenty of opportunities for polishing, burning, burnishing, sweeping, clearing, right? Of course, we are going to be given every opportunity to fulfill our divine mission, to know ourselves deeply enough all the way through, so that the great glory can get further to the surface of life, to uplift humanity, to shift the collective out of this deep imbalance, right? We start off by knowing this so clearly in our direct experience, living this, abiding in our true nature, collaborating in utter devotion, The self falling into the self, falling into the self, falling into the self. And as the self falls deeper into the self, there is this shining light. It is the radiant heart of the self knowing itself, shining in and of itself, illuminated in its own knowing. And this is the light that has always been inside you. This is the divine light. Fall into the light and shine in the knowing of the self, falling into a deeper and deeper remembering. And the light shines, and the light shines, and the light shines. The light in truth is never dimmed, but to allow this light to shine as an embodiment, emanating this truth, this light, this love right on the surface of life. Right? We have to collaborate and live this truth. Resting, simply resting in true nature and watching the show. Know that it is just a show, a divine Leela. Every single fraction, fragment of that show is Mother, is God. Every single fiber, every single thing, every person, every happening, every event of every quality is only her. So we rest in the knowing. We rest in the glory, the knowing of the oneness as deeply as it is known. We rest and we watch. We watch in awe, and we allow there to be a transmuting, a purification, a humbling. We allow the heart to be cracked open by everything she is offering us, by not letting the tendrils going out into the story, but by feeling. What does your view evoke? What does it stir? Feeling everything that is stirred and transmuting, alchemizing it through the vehicle of divine service that is the body. As you transmute it, you're purifying and recalibrating the vehicle to be able to do deeper work, deeper work, deeper work, but never ever leaving your true nature, ever deepening in. This is not a problem. This is not a problem for the ocean, right? The ocean can take in the mud. If you put the mud into a glass, it creates a disturbance and creates a cloudiness. But if the mud is taken in by the ocean, it disappears, right? So resting as the ocean, resting as the ocean, we have this ability to alchemize, transmute. We're never given more than we are able to meet. Sometimes it will touch us in a way that feels personal. It's never personal, but it might feel personal. But the personal segues into the archetypal energies. And it's the archetypal energies that have to be transmuted, because they are moving as the discordant patterns in consciousness that play as separation. We're all entangled in some way. It is our mission to untangle any way that we are entangled in those discordant patterns, archetypal patterns, through our conditioning, untangling our conditioning, and untangling how we have this ability in the micro to impact the macro through facing everything, opening to everything that is seemingly the life, right? It's incredible. It's magnificent. It's miraculous that this is all happening, and we're fully engaged. We're fully engaged in service, in all of this, in every moment, every moment. Just to feel the resonance of truth and be humbled deeper. Let the mind humble into the heart. Let the mind and the conditioning and all of those tangled ways be humbled into heart, right? So then the personal disappears, and we are just moving to transmute and uplift through meeting everything that comes in and living this truth so deeply that our resonance, the frequency that we are vibrating at, we're a frequency of life that is vibrating in a very, very fine divine reverberation. And that, the fineness of our reverberation, the finer our reverberation, the more impact it has, right? So when we awaken out of separation and we know that truth, we immediately start being a force for change, for upliftment, right? As soon as we know that deep truth, that there is no separation, and then we are refining and refining and refining. As we refine, we bring more of the being to the surface. We're more embodied, right? We're living it on the surface. We're letting it flow into every area of our life. We're letting it dig around in all of our shadows. Right? It doesn't feel comfortable, but it's digging around in all of the shadow areas to illuminate, clear, right? Because the being wants to inhabit every single area of the life. This is the true embodiment. It's purifying and clearing out every single closet, every nook and cranny, every dark corner, right? So the whole life is being touched, and we're refining and refining, using the body and attention and the openness to receive and receive. It's incredible. It's a miraculous, incredible unfolding. It's life living itself. And our lives, the lived experience, is how the transmutation and the alchemizing, the distilling of what seems like discordant, what seems like suffering even, or pain, we're alchemizing it into bliss. As we alchemize it into bliss, that bliss is fed in our surrender to the divine. And as we feed our surrender to the divine, to the unknown, that divine flows, gushes in order to get to the surface of life, right? So as we surrender, refine, purify, transmute, transform, all of our alchemizing, our discomfort, it's an offering to the silence, it's an offering to the divine, it's feeding the gods, we could say, it's feeding the mother, it's feeding her. With our surrender, it's saying, only you, only you, only you, only this, only truth, right? And in that declaration, that oblation, that devotion, that surrender, that is received. It's like the bliss is taken in, and it intoxicates itself. It gets intoxicated in its own blissful yumminess because there's a transmutation happening and the consciousness shifts, right? It's like we're like worker bees, right? We bring it back to the hive in our surrender, give it to the queen, right? We feed the queen in whichever way, right? And then the flow of the nectar, the flow of the sweetness, we feel it in what seems like our lives. We feel the sweetness of living in this truth. We feel the sweetness of living as love, living in collaboration, living in the oneness. We feel the sweetness, and we have more openness, more resilience, more willingness to keep receiving whatever comes in life. And simultaneously, our knowing deepens. Our felt sense of belonging to the glory, our oneness with the glory deepens, right? So anything that can create distraction or separation, it's getting refined into the oneness. It's getting honed, and we taste more of the sweetness, and then the light gets brighter, and as the light gets brighter, it starts to illuminate more of those dark areas that have to be seen through, right? Nothing is a mistake. Everything is a part of this incredible, organized flow of the laws of nature. It's all flowing out of the heart of the Divine Mother, right? This is the glory. This is the glory. Everything that is coming forward is exactly what is needed for us to deepen our surrender, for us to confirm the allegiance, the collaboration with truth. Not a hair out of place. Right? So as these words come, there's nothing to do. We already are. The collaboration is not a doing. The allegiance, it's not a doing. It's not someone making an allegiance. It's recognizing what is here and what is always independent and free of someone. What is always here that has always been here. Who have you always been before the mind, before the story, before everything? Who are you? What have you always been before you became, before the story of birth? See through the illusion of birth and find the silence of the eternal true nature. Right now, this moment is full of this remembering. The field is alive with this remembering, and it is just to attune to your own resonance of freedom, your own resonance of being, wholeness, pure, innocent, immaculate being. When you discover the innocence of your own nature, the recognition of the innocence of all, because there is only one. None of the stories that the mind believes of itself are true, but the mind cannot work through its own mechanical maze to discover the wholeness, the pure power that is before all story. Only in this moment, here now, in the simplicity of being, in the stillness, the silence of now, is the recognition of your own heart, alive with its own knowing, a pure and simple knowledge, being yourself just as you have always been, before body, before mind, before name, before story, before everything. This is the wholeness of being that knows without doubt there is no separation.